picture's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. This is a test with the cute, noisy little girl beside me, and let's see how it sounds. Well, it's going to have to do, because I'm a little pressed for time, and I just want to get this done, and I have so much I'm dying to tell you. Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with, this is not my Friday reads, because today's Saturday, but this is my Saturday reads of my nonfiction November and novellas in November reading marathon. I am exhausted and happy, and let me start off with the good news. Those of you who watch my videos from start to finish, that's a distinct minority, I'm sure, might recall that when I did my Novellas in November TBR video, I spontaneously decided to have a giveaway and invited you to guess how many novellas I would read, not including Bales, during the month of November. And I am quite surprised and pleased to announce that I read through to completion 20 novellas in November. And that's not including all the other stuff I read this month. So the winning guess was from Claudia Ferreira, who guessed 19. So Claudia, send me an email. I've already put a reply to your comments with my email address, but I'll put my email address in the show notes so you've got it. Get back to me. It's not going to be quite as simple as I thought to get a gift certificate from the Book Depository to you for $25, because Book Depository doesn't do gift certificates at all, but we will make something equivalent work out, so get a hold of me. So yes, I had a fabulous Novellas in November month, but I also have to admit that I didn't bail on a lot of really awful novellas, especially this week. So I'm going to tell you all the gory details, and I do plan to do full reviews of several of the books, nonfiction and the novellas and whatnot. And those that I plan to do a full review on, I'm going to give very scant attention to in this video, because I don't think I have the energy or the time to edit another 50-minute video down to 30 minutes. And I don't think you have the attention span, so it's kind of a waste of time. At the same time, I don't want this to be an overly negative video, because I did, unfortunately, choose not to bail on a bunch of books that I really disliked intensely. So I want to balance that out for you, so let's get started. I finished 17 books this week, so that will be the bulk of my Friday reads, is telling you about them. I'm ignoring all background sounds. You have assured me to the point, and this I don't have time to worry about it. I'll try to do a little grumpy thing to give you a little chortle, but I'm not going to work around the ambient background noise. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. The first book that I finished this week is Country Dance by Margot Evans. She was a British-Welsh writer, and this novel, which I had started and told you about last week, this was a buddy read with Charlotte of Tired Mama Tries to Read and Ange of Beyond the Pages, and we all loved it. It's one of Charlotte's favorite novels, and we're going to do a joint review later, so I'm not going to say too much about it. It was absolutely fabulous. I can't stop thinking about it. It was written in the 1930s, I believe, and it's set on either side of the border, and in fact of where they are at any given time, and the Welsh people tend to be on the English side of the border and vice versa, and it's just mind-blowingly enigmatic, and I couldn't stop turning the pages. That's enough. Full review coming. I loved it. Unfortunately, this one, which started out so compellingly, didn't go that well. Helen Weinswig's novella, Passing Ceremony. It didn't kill my fascination for her, but this was her debut novel from 1973, and it was published when she was about 70, maybe 60s, in her 60s. It's very surreal, and it's about all the bride and groom and all of the assembled guests, family and friends at their wedding. And it's written in short little chapters, and you don't really know what's going on, and at first that intrigued the crap out of me, but I think I felt like she lost it, or it didn't cohere enough for me, and there was one part of the mysterious story that didn't work for me at all. There was some old lady. It seemed to be that the wedding reception was taking place in her house, and she was bedridden and being abused by people, and I could never get the connection between her and the members of the wedding party, and found her part of the story deeply dissatisfying, so I was hate reading it by the end. Didn't like it at all. I will read more by Helen Weinswig, but this was a bitter disappointment, and that sets the tone for a lot of these, but not all. On audio, I finished the popular history How to Behave Badly in Renaissance Britain by Ruth Goodman. This was a buddy read with Ange of Beyond the Pages, and I almost loved it. Much of it I really loved. The narration by Ruth Goodman, the audio narration, was wonderful. It's about all the ways people could be rude or snub each other or insult each other in the era, and a lot of it, especially the stuff about language and swearing and all that, was really, really fantastic. But then there was a chapter about weapons, and I thought it didn't need to be there. And one of the flaws of the novel, which definitely I knocked a star off for, was she'd talk about weapons, or the other one that I really noticed it with was tobacco. And she would give so much general background historical detail about weaponry or about tobacco before she'd get into a very short treatment of how those things could be used in a rude way. And the background was really boring. My eyes were glazing over. So it wasn't perfect, but much of it I enjoyed. And it was very light social history that if you like that sort of thing, you would probably like. I finished the book that I guess is nonfiction. I'm counting it as nonfiction November. And Our Faces, My Heart, Briefest Photos by John Berger. Another 4-star read. Parts of it I really loved. When he would write about specific experiences or a specific painting, he just blew my mind. His facility with language and ability to describe an inner state or aesthetic / emotional reaction to a work of art, I was mesmerized. But he went on for too many pages in this short 90-page, 100-page book about philosophical topics, and I have a big hole in my intellect, which is I hate and immediately fall asleep whenever people start writing or talking about philosophy. Philosophy for me does not exist. I hate it. It's stupid. So my eyes glazed over for chunks of this because I just think philosophy is a joke. It's kind of like religion or psychology. It's not as bad as religion, but worse than psychology, maybe. Anyway, 75% of it I really loved, and I want to read more by John Berger. And maybe I'll go back, and there was things about death and about being born and about existential stuff, and as soon as it gets a little too existential, it's like nah. But it was pretty deep, so maybe I'll go back and reread parts of it whenever the philosophical spirit moves me. This, A Tomb for Boris Davidovich by Delano Kish, a Serbo-Croatian writer. This was a buddy read with Lukash of Totally Pretentious, and we loved it. This was a 5-star read for me, really surprising. I don't know if I have much else to add to what I said last week, and in fact, no, I think I'm going to I'm going to attempt a full review of this, but it was intricate, intellectually and emotionally stimulating. The way that he made the separate stories not separate, the way he joined them up with real literary elan, is that the right word? It really reminded me of, I think I said this last week, it really reminded me of Anthony Marr's The Tsar of Love and Techno. Just a gem of a novel, first published in English in 1978. Lukash and I enjoyed it so much, we're going to buddy read another one of his short novels for Novellas in November next year. This was maybe the biggest disappointment because I had been looking forward to reading this for months and months, and it was awful. Language Go Down by Aidan Higgins, a 1966 Irish novel, his debut novel. And when I say it was awful, what I really mean is I hated it. As a piece of writing, I mean, he's a brilliant writer. The prose was gorgeous, but the prose was also the problem. There was no heart in this. There was no feeling. It was so antiseptic, detached, and intellectual that I didn't give a flying fuck about anything or anything going on. And the weirdest thing, this was a buddy read with Christine, and I keep blanking on, it's either turning 52 pages or turning pages 52. Her channel, please check it out. And we agreed on this. It started out really strong, and it was about three sisters, and we couldn't place how old they were until about halfway through the novel. And the first section, set in 1938, focused on Helen, and she seemed like she was about 80. And she comes home after a non-specified amount of time away from their house in the on their estate near a little town near Dublin, and the place is falling down around them, and they don't seem like they don't care about each other, don't hardly talk to each other. And we briefly meet her sister Imogen in that 1938 section, but there's the other sister is Lily, and she is obliquely referred to once in this section, like she opened the door for Helen to come in, and then she's never referred to, other than one more oblique reference in the middle section, which is 1932. And the story centers around a love affair that Imogen has with a young German guy who's been given free lodgings on their estate in the hired man's cabin down the way. And they have a tempestuous, very erotic, not that it was erotic to read, but they have a very deeply sexual love affair, and it doesn't go well. Nobody was likable. Nobody jumped off the page, and it bugged me that we hardly saw Helen again after the novel opens with her coming home. And we never, why have a sister named Lily in a novel and then don't show her, say anything about her? That just drove me crazy. Instead, we have pages and pages of sex. Wasn't uninteresting to me. A lot of weird dysfunctional relationship stuff that gets expressed indirectly. Very little interiority of the characters. And pages and pages of that interspersed with the German guy Otto lecturing his Irish girlfriend on Irish history because he was an academic. And it was just so dry and so preciously devoid of anything that makes fiction come alive for me. I absolutely hated it. Talk about a cover by gone to shit. Blech. That's how I really felt. I finished this on audio. I bought the paper copy, never ever referred to it because it just was more convenient for me to listen to it on audio. I love this. 5 stars. Words on the Move by John McWhorter. Why English won't and can't sit still, like literally. I have my views on grammar and how to teach the language to second language learners was already evolving. A lot of grammar stuff is just stupid and elitist and shouldn't be taught because it's ridiculous. This deepened that transition for me. I loved it. I can't recommend it highly enough. I am going to try to do a full review. It's so accessible, breezy writing style, really great stuff in it. So I want to give you more of a taste of it in a full review later. 5 stars. History of Violence by Edouard Louis, brilliantly translated by Lauren Stein. I don't know if he's the same translator, I assume, as did the End of Eddie translation, but this read, if I hadn't known it was translated, I would have argued with you that it was just written in English. It was so brilliant. This was a 5-star read for me. This is about, I think it's completely a true story, but I shouldn't say that without having done a little bit more research. But it's about the main character whose name is Edward, who has just finished writing his first novel called The End of Eddie, and he gets raped. A guy picks him up outside of his apartment, and he brings him up into his apartment, and yeah. So the narrative doesn't focus on the actual assault for more than about 5 or 10 pages. But what it does focus on is the effect of that on the protagonist. And I'm going to do a full review of this because this, I thought, was a remarkable achievement. And what was most remarkable about it, other than its portrayal of the numbness that an assault like that, that's the first thing that happens to somebody who's been brutalized like that, is to just go numb, and it portrayed that. So I think readers that are looking for more of an emotionally cathartic work, it's not here, because it focuses on the first few days after the assault. And the poor guy, he's just numbed out. But what I thought was brilliant was the narrative technique. And I'm not going to say any more here because I got to go, but I'm going to do a full review and talk about the wonderful way he played with narrative point of view to craft this novel. I thought it was it's maybe the best gay novel I've read this year. And I haven't read very many, but this was just amazing. And Doris and I finished the Zora Neale Hurston biography this week. We started it in early November. We read a chapter or two a day. Wrapped in Rainbows, The Life of Zora Neale Hurston by Valerie Boyd. We're going to do a joint review. I absolutely loved it. Even it had flaws, but who cares about the stupid little flaws? I loved it. I fell in love with Zora like 10 times more. I'm going to tell you all about it. Doris and I are going to tell you all about it in a joint review. Less successful was a buddy read that's been ongoing for all year, I think. A bunch of people, I think it was organized maybe by Ange of Beyond the Pages, to do the complete works of Mary Stewart. I read a few Mary Stewart novels when I was a teenage girl and remember enjoying them. So I joined for this one, and it was 2 novellas in one book. The Wind Off the Small Isles and The Lost One. And to be honest, I was underwhelmed. And I think that's all I need to say. The first one, the setting was really interesting. It was on an island. I can't remember. The setting was interesting, and I've already forgotten what it was, but it was islands, the volcanic islands. And the second one was awful. But I had fun talking about Mary Stewart with those lovely booktubers. There's a whole bunch of them. I won't try to name them because I'll probably forget one of them. I started this again and did the whole thing as an audio text combo. Train Dreams by Dennis Johnson. I had started it on audio only, maybe last month or something, and I didn't get very far because of October. Did it again this week and loved it. Liked it a lot. There were parts of the writing was gorgeous and typical Dennis Johnson sorcery, but there was a kind of a supernatural wolf girl part of the story that left me cold, so I had to knock a star off for that. But otherwise, just Dennis Johnson. Really great. This was a surprise, and I can't remember which booktuber, I think it was a booktuber, earlier this month, talked about this novel, and it made me want to read it for the first time. I'd heard quite a bit about it when it first was nominated for the Man Booker International Prize, but I ordered it, and I read it last week. Die, My Love by Ariana Harwich, translated by Sarah Moses and Carolina Orloff. Isn't she an Argentinian? No, she's an Argentinian writer, so translated from the Spanish. I love this. I really loved this. And from what I heard in the early reviews, I thought, that's not a Sean book, but this was really a Sean book. It's a portrayal of a young Argentinian wife married to a French guy living in the countryside of France, or living in a little town in France. And short, bite-sized chapters, and you never really know how much of what's being narrated is happening externally in the real, quote-unquote, real world of the novel, and how much of it is happening inside the rather demented protagonist's mind. And that is not something I usually go for, but to me, most of it was just pee my pants funny. Now, did I misread it? I mean, it was dark, but she was always fantasizing about killing her little baby boy or her husband, but I knew that was in her mind, or I assumed it was, and I just went along for the ride. It was hilarious and really well done, and this again didn't read like a translation. It read like wonderful English, so kudos to the translator. there's a passage where she talks about listening to something on the radio about Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, and it really does read as kind of an homage to demented Mrs. Dalloway. I loved her. It was really endearing in a wacky way. And I Will Read More by Ariana Harwich. This was one of the biggest surprises of novellas in November. I made a big effort to finish all of the books that I wanted to finish in November by the end of the day Wednesday, so that I could read 5 more novellas on Thursday and Friday, and I did it. And it almost killed me. I'm still exhausted. But more than that, I really regret it, because almost all of them were bad, and I wish I had bailed on most of them, and I didn't. So, Claudia, I guess I did that for you, because it might not have hit your number, but I finished all these books. So let me tell you about some bad books. This one was not really bad, but it was bad. It was not a good novel, and everybody loved it. I thought it was really disappointing. Brother by David Cheriandi. It started out, the prose is wonderful at the beginning. The opening chapter was stunning, and I did think the ending had some emotional power, but the middle just sucked. It was so flimsy. The characterization was so weak. I didn't really care. I mean, I cared that that ending chapter worked, but it's about a young Canadian of Trinidadian descent, and his single mom and his brother, who we think has either disappeared or something years earlier. And an old girlfriend comes back into town, and it just was insipid. Insipid's too strong a word. It was just flimsy. I don't know where all the kudos for this are coming from, but I really disagree. But I think he's a writer to watch on the basis of how the book opened and how the book ended. He is a writer that I will be following very avidly, but this was not a good novel. Disappointing. 3 stars. 3 stars is a bad book, remember. This was worse. This was a buddy read with Curtis of Curtis Books and Films. Why the hell didn't I bail on this? Michelle Roberts, Daughters of the House. It started out pretty good. She's not a bad writer. The characters were much more fully developed than in the Cheriandi novel, but the story was just ridiculous. It's about 2 cousins that grow up in this countryside in this house, and then there's something traumatic happened to one of the mothers in the basement during the Nazi occupation, and there's anti-Semitism, and there's weird stuff going on in the family dynamics, and I didn't give a flying you-know-what about anything by the end. It was overwritten, and the abrupt changes of writing style from kind of a surreal writing to just straightforward realistic narration was jarring, and it was so unsatisfying, and Curtis bailed. He read the first half. Now, when I read the first half on Thursday, and I left him a Voxer message and said, yeah, it's pretty good. I think I'm liking it. And then about 15 pages more on Friday, I sent him a little text on Voxer. I said, I want to bail. Well, he didn't like even the first half. I think it was because I was reading this alongside some novellas that were worse on Thursday. But yeah, it's pretty good. No, this was really shitty. And it was nominated for the Booker Prize. I am done with literary prizes. This was garbage. But what's worse than garbage? I guess shit. This was shit. The Invisibility Cloak by Ge Fei, translated by Kenan Morse. This is one of the worst novels I've ever read. Set in modern Beijing, modern being maybe 1980s. It was published in 2012, so maybe in the early 2000s. And it's about a Chinese guy who sells high-end audio systems to rich people in Beijing. And that's about as interesting as it sounds. Like, I kept waiting for something, and he has a totally cantankerous sister and brother-in-law that he hates, and the emotions were so annoying. The emotions as they were expressed, like there was no background, there was nothing about all of the vitriol and hatred that made me care about anything. I can't believe I finished this. It was just NYRB Books. Like, who chooses this crap? This was just 1 star. Oh, And the invisibility cloak, like, there's a brief reference to, it's not even a character, but somebody that the main character had heard about who wore an invisibility cloak. Like, he didn't appear in the book at all. And this is the title. Oh, this was just, I can't believe I read this. Claudia, you owe me. I was really disappointed by this too. Why Shoot the Teacher by Max Braithwaite, a 1960s novel set in Depression-era Saskatchewan. I read it when I was in my teens, and oh my god, the writing was awful. Now, I gave it, I had to give it 2 stars because it read like somebody's memoirs who'd never written anything for 50 years. Like, it was just, there were no scenes, it was really limp prose, but the story itself was interesting. So if you're just interested in that era and what it was like to be a school teacher in the winter in a little one-room schoolhouse in the boonies of Saskatchewan, there's enough to keep you turning the pages, but it was such an unsatisfying, as a piece of fiction, it was trash. God. So it really felt like my Novellas in November was ending with a whimper, not a bang, but thankfully the last book that I finished on audio last night was Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton, and I really liked it. I studied it in grad school. I have no memory of it. None. I wonder if I even finished reading it, because, when you're a grad student, things kind of fall off the edges. I quite enjoyed it. I didn't love it. I didn't like without going into it, it's a classic, but I'm not going to worry too much about spoilers, but there's a illicit love affair, and the choice that the 2 lovers make, because they have no choice but to be parted, and they make a choice that's really dark, and I didn't like that. Just as a theme of literature, it's just so ridiculous. But then how the novel ended, I thought was brilliant. So the writing is gorgeous, the everything. It's Edith Wharton. Edith Wharton is amazing. So I'm so glad that I reread it, and now I will remember it. Now, Ethan Frome is a wonderful little novella. So that was how I ended my novellas in November. So I did 20 novellas in November, and that was number 20. So those are the books I finished. I have one bail to tell you, and I'm really disappointed about this one too. 80% of the way in, I bailed on this novel. I'm not sure what it is. Tanya Tagak's Splitfoot. I was doing it on audio. I did buy the gorgeous hardcover, but I was doing most of it on audio anyway, without benefit of the book, because that was kind of the busy month I was having. And when I first told you about this, I was gushing about the audio narration, and I have to say that it was the audio narration that drove me fucking crazy by the end, and I only had 20% more to go, and I couldn't bring myself to finish it. I may read the whole book from start to finish in a few years' time. There were parts of it that were searing and ripped my heart out, but the problem I had was that she didn't vary her intonation. She had a breathy kind of shamanic tone of voice with which she narrated the whole book, and for the parts where that fit, it was transportive. But there was also a lot of more everyday experiences, like going to school, and the girls don't like me at school, and that guy's really cute, and it was all delivered in that same breathy tone of voice, and that just made me want to puke. I couldn't finish it. So disappointed, but a lot of people loved it. A lot of people love it, and I think you should check it out. But that's the thing with audio narration. Just because I like the 5-minute preview of the audio narrator doesn't mean that I'm not going to get completely sick of that voice, and that's what happened here. I have started a few books. I can't remember if I had started this last Friday or not, but I have now read the first part of The Court Dancer by Kyung Suk Shin. This is a buddy read with Kendra Winchester. I'm now going to be able to focus on it now that those other readathons are out of the way. And the first section I enjoyed. I didn't love it, but I was pretty interested in it, except for the awful sex scene. Why do people put sex scenes in literature? I mean, but I'm not going to hold that against the novel. I just hope there's no more sex in this novel, because... but anyway, this story is starting out really interesting. And I started this today, Virginia Woolf's The Waves. This is a reread. Last time I read it was before my husband was born, 30 years ago. No, he's older than 30, but anyway. Yeah, a long time ago I read it and loved it. Don't remember a thing about it. I'm reading it with a view to rereading Lenny Zumas's Red Clocks. I'm not sure if I'm going to reread that this month or not. I'll get to that, but just 20 pages in, or 30 pages in, and loving it. This is a buddy read with Britta Polar. And today on audio, I started Michelle Obama's memoirs, Becoming. And it's exactly what Eric, if you haven't seen Eric's wonderful review, you should, and I would already just echo that 1,000%. Just having Michelle Obama in your ear after all the crap news about Trump, it's just a Christmas present to myself. I'm only 30 minutes into it and it's 19 hours. It's going to refresh me like nothing else could, living in this era. God, it's just wonderful. Okay, so to close, I'm not going to do any TBRs for December. I'm not taking on any more buddy reads in December. I've got the one with Britta and the one with Kendra ongoing, and I'm not doing any more. This is a conscious choice, and I want to do something different in December. This is not a permanent change, but just a 1 month vacation from the way that I've been reading books. The biggest joy of my reading life in 2018 has been all the buddy reads I have been doing. And I want a break, and I want to re-experience the way that I used to read back in Canada, which was I would finish a book or bail on a book. I wasn't as big of a bailer back then, but anyway, I would finish a book, put it back on the shelf, and then I would wander around my apartment where I had 5,000 books or whatever, and just peruse the shelves and wait. And sometimes it took 10 minutes or 20 minutes, however long it took, and just wait for a book to figuratively jump off the shelf and into my hands, and to be completely spontaneous about which book I would read next. So I want to let go of all the planning, and I just want to read and not buy any more books. Oh no, I'll probably buy more books, but not buy books and read them this month. I want to just let my shelves beckon to me. So that's the kind of reading month I'm looking forward to. Now, by the time I finish the books that I have ongoing now, I don't know how much time I'm going to have for that, but that's how I plan to spend my reading time. I think it's going to be absolutely wonderful. I may have forgotten stuff because I'm feeling a little pressed for time, but this is my Saturday reads. I kept Friday for, I think I said at the beginning of this video, I got to redo I'm going to redo the opening. So that was my Saturday reads. Well, I hope you're having a great weekend. What's up for you, reading-wise or otherwise? See you next week. Thanks for watching.